Kelly Cross, T-Mobile Wireless Communication Tower at Roberts Field.
Yeah,
Thank you.
If I can just have some introductory remarks before Kelly speaks. Mr. Chairman, in the more than 10 years that I've served the town of Chelmsford, this is the first time a proposed wireless communication tower has come before the board. I think our only community experience recently was with the water district, where they had where we kind of were on the periphery with the whole issue of the construction there and the neighborhood issues there. I want to explain to the board what's coming before you this evening. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, we received a unsolicited written proposal from T-Mobile regarding the Roberts Field site. And the initial communications they had were with Fire Chief Gary Ryan, because the fire station that's there at the site. When that response came in, we sent out a response, which I copied Gary Ryan, Chairman Dixon, and Evan Blansky, a Community Development Director, and basically explained to them the process that this would take place. I think it's helpful to just explain to the community the process as well. That the process to site a cell tower on municipal property in the community would require approval of the Board of Selectmen. It would also require town meeting approval, and the town meeting approval pertains to the fact that you would then be surplusing the property for wireless telecommunication tower purposes. Also, you need a town meeting approval for any lease that's longer than 5 years. And then you also would be subject to a procurement process where if those steps were completed, then we'd go out to competitive bid for the process. So we explained that to the T-Mobile representatives, and they wanted to still move forward and come to present it to you. They asked for your upcoming meeting dates. We gave them your upcoming meeting schedule. At that point, I then suggested that if they were coming, that they ought to bring a site plan, and you have that in your materials, as well as renderings that would demonstrate how the tower would be visually impacted, or the view shed from the area. And they provided that as well. I also told them that they should expect neighborhood opposition to the site, and then finally that if they were to submit a tower, it was my suggestion that they do it in terms of a monopole, because of the openness of that location. That of the three possibilities, to my knowledge, i.e. a tree-like type of tower that we've seen, the faux trees, or the standard traditional tower, that of the three, I thought aesthetically a monopole would maybe be the most attractive, given that it is a park-like setting, and that anything that looked like a flagpole might be the least objectionable of those three. So that's what brings them before you this evening, and I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you so much for listening to me today. Like he said, I sent over a proposal.
Can you give us all who you are,
okay.
who you work
I'm
for,
sorry.
all that good stuff?
My name's Kelly Cross. I work for Tectonic Engineering, and we're contracted to Mobility and T-Mobile.
Thank you.
T-Mobile has a considerable coverage gap along Old Westford Road and Main Street. The residences along that road don't have enough coverage. The data usage has gone way up, and the towers can only handle a certain amount of calls and data usage at the same time. So as a public utility, they're not giving the coverage that they're mandated to do. So I visited the area and looked at all the properties along the road, and we like to come to the municipalities first. It seems like this would be a great opportunity to fund Roberts Field's playground. What I had proposed, because of the height of the tower, I had proposed a ball field light. So the monopole, as Mr. Cohen had spoke about, would be the least obtrusive, but then at the lower height, beneath the antennas, we could put ball field lights. If that would help, with evening baseball games or things like that. We also could design it where we put a flag, but if we do put the flag up, we'll have to light it. Because there wouldn't be a staff needed, there to bring the flag down every day. Right. So I decided to go with the ball field light as the first, to give you an idea of how that would look, and because it's they play baseball and they play, I thought that that might be a benefit to the community. We are proposing to lease 40 by 40 feet, 1,600 feet, right behind there's a utility building behind Fire Station number 3. And it's designed, all this is very preliminary, but I am proposing using the CMU block, just like the building. So it would just be an extension, the equipment enclosure would be an extension of the existing building. I measured all of the setbacks. Most of the houses, the average setback from where I'm proposing the tower is over 700 feet. Within the code, you need to be 500 feet from residential structures. And like I said, we're over 700 feet. There's only 2 homes with a big visual impact directly across the street from the fire station. And I think that setback is it's over 500 feet, but those are the closest 2 homes to where we're proposing. Does anybody have any questions for me?
How high are you proposing?
195 feet. And the reason it's 195 feet is in order for co-location.
To get enough
Yeah, so
carriers on.
other carriers could come and you wouldn't have to, proliferate more towers. You could have 1 tower, there's 4 major carriers. That height would be able to accommodate at least 4 or more.
Okay. You're
So-
aware of the fact that a couple of years ago, there was a proposal to put it on our water tower, not too far from where you're talking about. And there was an awful lot of opposition to it, and part of the problem is height. And they ended up putting the band around, they built a different style water tank, and they ended up putting it around the band of the tank. So.
We've done that. And
We're very sensitive about height, and even though it may be 700 feet to the closest house, 200 residents will probably see it, because it will be sticking up in the middle 200 feet.
Well, the other reason for the height is there's a lot of very large mature trees in that area. So in order to get
Large what?
trees, mature,
trees.
like pine trees,
Yeah.
there's some deciduous trees, and the coverage area is the length of Old Westford Road. So you're trying to get, down to Main Street, and Westford Road, it's just a vertical, a column area. It's not a circular coverage area. So there isn't anything in that area where people are lacking coverage that's commercial. And in order to reach those residences, this is the most central location. And then also, it's beneficial because the town would get the money for that.
Right. But at the time of that water tower expansion, I did ask the question about Roberts Field, and there was no interest, because it was too far away from what they were focusing on. Are you familiar with the one that's on
Lark Road.
Lock Road?
I believe so, but can I explain to you how the towers work, in like how far
Please.
away, or do you know, or is that interesting? I mean,
Yeah, it's not so much as how it works as, when is it too many? We got one that's within half a mile of where you are. It's got co-location on it as well, I believe,
on Lock Road,
on the Locker Road, yeah.
and how tall is that one?
Well, the problem is that it's not that tall. It's on the side of the water tower, because the residents in that area were opposed to having anything stuck up in the air, and that was only proposed, I think,
Probably 5
100
feet.
feet, Paul, at that time.
It is still on top of the hill, though.
On top of
It's
the hill.
only
It's on top of the
It
hill.
sits up on Lock Road, but it's not that tall. But
40 feet, maybe.
What the problem you get when you have a water tank is that vertically, we have to have a separation from another carrier's frequency. So each carrier has their own band of frequency, like
Right.
a radio station. And
Right.
we have to, the tips of each antenna have to be 10 feet apart. So if you only have a 40-foot tank, then we're only going to be at like 25 feet at the top of our antenna. And the antennas are 8 feet. So we're going to be, you know what I mean? We're not going to be tall enough to reach anybody and do any good.
I understand what you're saying, but it also goes around the surface of the tank, so
Yeah, but we can't be on the same,
you can't be
Height.
on the same height, even though the height may be 30 or 40 feet away, pointing in a different direction? That seems weird.
I'm not an engineer, but we always have to maintain the vertical separation.
Mhm.
And the minimum's always between 8 and 10 feet,
Yeah.
from tip to tip.
Well, I
it-
think, I think it's an upward battle. The fact that you're even before us is surprising, because I think my first year on the board, someone approached us about Apple Country Club, and they were basically told that, you know, it would be a worthless fight to try to put there. So, you know, I certainly don't want to see, you know, a 200-foot, I don't care if it's a flagpole or a tree or what it is. I'm just not in favor of that, and I think that there are probably other locations you could locate to, notwithstanding the extra money for Roberts Field. I mean, that's not a deal maker for me, you know, it's,
Yeah, I mean,
We
it
have
it
other
could be,
s- we
it
have
could be
other sources.
$100,000 a year for, if you had all 4 carriers on this pole.
Glenn, you have a
That's a
question?
considerable amount of
Okay.
revenue.
Considering the sophistication of data today, you know there are X amount of T-Mobile people who are subscribers out that area?
I don't have the numbers for you. If we got to a public hearing or a zoning hearing, our radio frequency engineer would be here, and they would have those numbers.
Would they know exactly who they are?
You name by name?
That you could mail them and say what their feelings are about this?
You know, they could send out a blast. This is going to be up to T-Mobile's business department. But we've done, and with other carriers, we've done blast emails where they send out the email to all of their subscribers in the area, and they get those people to come to the public hearing.
You indicated that you prefer first going to public.
Mm-hmm.
And it implied that there's a Plan B if we don't go along with this. Is there a Plan B?
Well,
To go to a private?
Yeah, according to your zoning bylaws, we're allowed in the residential area also. But first choice is always to go to the municipality rather than be at someone's farm or, I mean, not necessarily, but we're going to be in a denser neighborhood if we go into somebody's personal property.
Paul, is there more restrictions to a homeowner or abutters if they decide to go that route?
No, even if they go through the town, they're going to have to go to the Board of Appeals as a permitting authority, so that won't be any
That stays
different.
the same.
That stays the same.
And am I correct that the money, if the monies, let's say it's $25,000, cannot go to Roberts Field, it has to go to the general fund by statute?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the town meeting would decide, it would go to the general fund and be certified in your local receipts, as, you know, and then town meeting decides how all monies go.
Could
appropriated.
town meeting then distribute the money on a annual basis, so much to Roberts Field, so much to this, so much to that?
Like any other appropriation in our $130 million budget, yes.
Yes, sir.
Would it be possible to ask the presenter if she could please rotate the slides so we could get
We
a
don't-
full appreciation of the height
Oh.
of the towers?
That's outside of our control. One of the problems is our internet is down, so we're not able to
I mean,
move off this.
one of the icons on the top would rotate that rather rapidly.
Yeah, right, one over, no, come back.
If you go to
Right
view,
there. Still won't do it.
No, not doing it.
Can we pass out one of the pictures that we have?
Sure.
I'm gonna get that. We are open to different designs. Very preliminary.
You have what, you have two other locations in the state? One in Grafton, is it, and one in Millbury? Is that your company?
I know that the closest tower that T-Mobile has, it's right off of 495, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 495, it's in a commercial, not sure if it's a shopping center, but it's a commercial area, and it's probably 3 miles away from this proposed.
The one on, opposite the drive-in site, what's the street that, the car dealer?
Oh, yeah.
Kidder Road?
Car parts, what is it?
Kidder?
Kidder.
Kidder Road.
Down Kidder Road, there is one on a commercial. Commercial.
You
And-
describe the, you started to talk about, you would be able to describe the pattern in terms of why it has to be there to serve
Okay.
this corridor.
The coverage gap is a mile long of Old Westford Road. So it's for people that are traveling through Chelmsford and Westford, and it's for the residents. And people are using their phones to upload videos, download videos, movies, they're texting. And when people are using that much bandwidth, and the people that want to make phone calls, each tower can only handle so much per every 15 seconds. So if someone's taking up the bandwidth, let's say there's 15 little, 15-year-olds, not little, but 15-year-olds uploading a movie, downloading a movie, and I'm talking to whoever, and my call's going to get dropped because there isn't a tower close enough that it's sending the signal over to the next tower as I'm traveling or as I'm in my home on my phone.
So is it directionality, or is it just a circle as far as the
On this
coverage
particular coverage gap, mostly it's an east-west rather than a lot of these, when a carrier will issue a search area, it usually is circular. Let's see if I can show you on here. This is Old Westford, correct? So the coverage gap is narrow. It's like goes around this way, all throughout Chelmsford and then Westford.
So you can tune the equipment to create that kind of field?
Yes.
No, I think you said where was the gap, though, didn't you?
Well, no, what is the configuration of the field? Is it a circle, is it rectangular?
It's
Is it-
rectangular.
In this case,
particular
so you
one.
can turn the equipment to do kind of what you want in
Mhm.
terms of dedicate the area.
Mm-hmm.
Or?
Yeah, why does all the paperwork that we receive say that the site name is Westford, Mass? Are you looking for some space between Westford Field to Westford?
No.
Or-
That's the name of the site should be Chelmsford FD number 3. Or if you'd prefer, it could be Chelmsford Robertsfield. That's something that we're going to change prior to submitting into zoning. This was very preliminary, and
Again, you keep mentioning Main Street, which is in a different part of town,
Yeah.
so What exactly are the streets that we're concerned with?
Well, Old Westford changes into Main Street. and
Main
that's
Street
the-
in Westford?
In Westford.
Right,
Yeah.
No,
right. So we're
Okay,
trying to
so
get the end of Old Westford Road and then part of
It's Westford.
Main
Yeah,
Street.
exactly. We're looking for something between Roberts Field and somewhere down in Westford.
And it's about, like I said, about 3/4 of a mile is all that, I mean, it's not a very big area that I have to look for, that will serve this gap.
Glenn?
This question is probably more for Paul.
Yeah.
Is there any statute that, if we don't want it, is there any statute that says they can override it by going through certain procedures for the good of the public in general?
There are federal guidelines requiring wireless coverage. They'd have to make that case to do that effort.
And they would have to go to the Board of Appeals.
Right.
And would they also have to go to planning? Because the piece of property it's on, of course, that's public, but,
Right.
Have to go to a town meeting as well, right?
Right.
yeah, and it has to go to
Right.
town meeting. So
But
there's
if they- if they-
there's
but if-
three hurdles.
Right, but if they were going somewhere else, if they were going to Lupien's Farms instead, adjacent, and said they were going through that, they wouldn't have the town they wouldn't have the town process, but they still would have to go through the Board of Appeals, and if the Board of Appeals turned them down, which is what Glenn was asking for, then are there avenues outside of the town? And yes, I believe if they make a case that this is required for public safety and the public benefit, that there's no inadequate coverage, then they could come in and request the site.
There's a mandate that people have access to E911, and so if there's if we can prove that there's a substantial gap right there and people can't call police, they can't call the fire department, then we're mandated to provide that ability for those subscribers.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would really like to know, you're talking about 70, about 3/4 of a mile. I'd like to know how much of it is in Chelmsford and how much of it's in Westford. Because if it's really a Westford problem, then they ought to be sharing some of the burden here.
Okay, let me look at this really quick.
I guess, what would you mean by share the burden?
They wouldn't get any of the income.
Maybe.
Yeah, really?
Maybe
You want us
there's-
to share the 25,000 a year with
maybe
Joe
there's-
Westford?
Maybe in the 3/4 of a mile, there's only 2 houses that are in Chelmsford.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would think that a majority of the coverage would have to be provided from Westford to cover all their people, and then would probably cover us as well. That's-
Okay,
I'm-
well,
you know,
yeah, I mean, I was just kind of being
as you know,
sarcastic.
there's
I
probably
know.
farms down in there that could be used for that type of
Well,
thing.
I just have one question before.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We're gonna
So,
have public, excuse me, there's a lot of people with their hands up.
Just
We're
to
gonna-
answer Bob, it's mostly Chelmsford because it's a low point. Westford's at the top of the hill, so they're picking up the tower in front. Because I know I'm always dropping a call as I'm coming home, right, because I live in that neighborhood. But Westford, the town line's at the top of the hill, and you pick up that next tower once you get into Westford. So it's mostly Chelmsford that's affected.
Yeah, and everything that I submitted to the RF engineers that was in Westford, they said was too far. That it wasn't central enough and we weren't going to get coverage in Chelmsford.
Go ahead, Pat.
okay, well, my question just is,
And forgive me, because I live in New York, so, this was my first foray in the area, so forgive me if I'm not familiar exactly how far. But most of it, like he said, was, there's a horse farm right there, is that that's in Westford? That was too far.
so my question just has to do with what happens today. I mean, if we vote, if we don't say no, then the next step would be to go to town meeting, correct? I mean, is it just,
But ultimately, you'd have to say something, because if the town meeting approves it, and they go to the Board of Appeals, and then we do a procurement thing, you'd have to confirm a bid award and sign it.
so that would be like
So-
step 4 in the process?
Right. Right, right,
So-
right. So, yeah, if you decided to defer and allow it to move forward, eventually it's going to come back to you.
But the next step would be town meeting, is that correct?
Yes.
So if
the
we
next
were to
step-
say,
right.
if we were not to say no today, then it would be
Right.
on the spring town meeting warrant, is that correct?
That would be the next opportunity for the town to consider it, because you can't go before the Board of Appeals unless you have demonstrated control of the site. So therefore, you need to, in order to do that, you'd have to get the town meeting authorization to convey that, and that's be a 2/3 vote of town meeting as well.
Would your town meeting be a public hearing?
Oh, yeah, it's public.
So then, no, and I mean that in all.
Yeah, we have a representative town meeting with 162 reps from across the community, and it's a public process. Anybody in the community can speak. at
Right,
town
and I
meeting.
mean that in a positive way, meaning
No, right, right.
that your constituents would be there to voice either their opposition or maybe their support, that they don't have the coverage that they need. A lot of people these days don't even have home phones, so they want to be able to use their,
Yeah, I think we're beyond that. In that area, I think we're beyond it.
Well, we'll see.
We
We
have-
are going to have
We have
some.
wired lines throughout the entire town. We don't have an area that's like.
oh, no, I don't mean like that. I mean like, rather than have double bills, I don't have a home phone, I have cell
Right.
phones. So that's all I meant. No, I didn't mean like it was rural.
We are going to have some public input after, so.
I was just going to say, you're going to invite
Yes,
to
but,
identify themselves.
Yeah.
and-
so if you'd like to,
Want me to sit down?
if you'd like to, then maybe you could answer some questions if people want to speak. And
Okay.
then, okay?
From here or from over?
No, they're going to come up, they'll come up and
Okay.
speak, and you can answer it, maybe if you sit in the
Sure.
front row, or whatever.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Anybody like to come up and speak, please? Just state your name and address, please.
Norman LeBrecq, 2 Longspur Road in Chelmsford. I'm just down the hill across from the fire station. Some of the cell phone down there was not that great, but I'm willing to live with that because Roberts Field, which I believe is an asset to the community, and that this would significantly impact Roberts Field as well as the neighbors. I heard a mention of 700 feet to the closest residence. I'm looking at the aerial overlay, which shows the tower, the fire station, and the pond. I'm very familiar with that. As far as distance, I'm an engineer in the civil structural area, as well as I lined soccer fields for about 10 years. So I have a feel for distances. I look at one of their dimension drawings showing the location of the pad from the road, 290 feet. Directly across the road is a residence. So we're way short of 700. In fact, the distances that we are from a residence is much less than half of what she mentioned. What's 700 feet? That's almost 3 football fields long. From the fire station to the old Spence store, now defunct Rosie's, is definitely less than 2 football fields. And that's over in the corner as near the fork in Old Westford Road and School Street. The dimensions just don't make sense. I'd like to bring that attention to the board. So we don't know what's going on here. I don't see that this would be any improvement to the town of Chelmsford or to the neighborhood. And if there's a small blip of, less than a half a mile from where you start to climb up the hill, well, actually, you start climbing up the hill before you get, and just when about the time you get to Thomas Drive, which is the next street down. So if you're driving through that area, you'll get a feel. So there's just a small area where the cell phone for clients of one company have a problem. Or they have old-fashioned cell phones of the flip kind that don't give you much distance. Of course, this is already over 10 years old. So its ability to get reception today, in today's world, is really not that good. So I really urge this board to just say no, go elsewhere, people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing? I had mentioned that there are 2 homes that aren't 700 feet. So I didn't mean to suggest that every home was, I did mention that there were 2 homes that were closer than 700 feet. Within the code is 500 feet.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Wolfgang Bartz, 250 Westford Street. We have the property that's between the pond and Westford Street, this long pie slice-shaped property that you'll see on the plan there. And our house is about 400 feet from the proposed site. It says on the plan that it's 301 feet to our property line, is marked right on your plan. And I believe there are more than 2 residences that are within 700 feet and probably within 500 feet. That's one thing I would like to say. The other is, for comparison, the height of the tower, 195 feet, that is in fact 25 feet taller than the Cross Point building in Lowell. You may know it as the Wang building formerly. That's 170 feet tall. And if you, another point of reference, if you know the chimney in North Chelmsford at the Mills, that's 158. So 37 feet taller than that. And this is what we're talking about for a residential neighborhood, for a park. It's going to be an eyesore. It's going to be absolutely dominating. And I believe it will affect home values in the immediate neighborhood because of the looks of it. And I would like you to consider these facts.
Thank you.
George.
Go ahead, Glenn.
I just have one question for the gentleman.
Yes.
I assume you don't have T-Mobile.
We did at one point.
And how was the coverage?
Not very good, I would admit. It's not very good in any other. For our particular home, we have one cell phone that's AT&T, the other is Verizon. They're both not very good either.
Neither one.
Either one.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Zeminski. I actually live at 263 Old Westford Road. I don't know if you have all the maps from the T-Mobile site, but on page 4, there is a measurement, and it says our house is 331 feet from the proposed tower, so we're also within the 500 feet. So I don't know where they came up with, there's only 2 residences within the 700 feet. So we're within the 500 feet of the zoning bylaw on the town. Also, the proposed tower is going to be 190 feet, which is taller than the 150 feet approved by the zoning bylaws. So that's also above that. When we first moved to the house, we had AT&T, which did not have very good service. We switched to Verizon, so we actually no longer have any issues with our coverage since being on Verizon. We also have a landline just because we live in the neighborhood, and the way 911 works, we have small children. We didn't want to have to worry about, if there was an emergency, we wanted to be able to contact the correct people. As far as people traveling through that 1 mile strip, they should be able to text. You shouldn't be texting and driving anyway, so if that's the concern, I'm not really that worried about people texting while driving down a busy street where there's a playground. Those are my big concerns. It's also a huge eyesore. There's not many parks in town left that are as nice as Roberts Fields, and we're working on improving the park, so I feel like this would, all of the work that the town has done to improve the park would negatively affect it. Oh, okay, sorry. Those are my biggest concerns. It's just, we're trying to improve the town. There's not, I mean, I grew up in Chelmsford. I went to that park when I was in high school. I have a young child who plays at that park. It would just negatively affect everything that the town has worked for, in my opinion. Again, also, it goes against the zoning bylaws, so.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Demuth, and I live at 11 Field Street, so I am opposition, but not neighborhood opposition. But I do come to Roberts Field, and I think that I'm not sure she understands the character of the park. It's a very tranquil place. We have done a lot of work, Bill Askenberg and a lot of volunteers, Boy Scout troops, maintaining the nature trails, which I understand are to be removed, and the woods that will be clear cut. Planting native species, encouraging butterflies and wildflowers. And this seems to just basically decimate everything that has been done. If you go to the park during the day, I don't know how everybody does, but I mean, I always see people there, but there's a great blue heron who fishes in that pond, and he's very photogenic, and he's taking out peepers, and we don't have any spaces, or this is an unusual space in our town, and I just don't see how this can be worth it. The other thing you should know is about the business about creating lights and more sports stuff for the town. I was at the meeting for the improvement in terms of the playground, and a great number of residents were worried about creating too much stuff at the park, too much noise, creating a greater hassle all around. And so I'm not sure what they're proposing is even something that we want. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we've listened to everybody.
I'm sorry, can I speak? Hi, thank you. Bill Askenberg, 185 Westford Street. I'll speak to you first from a perspective of a neighbor and also the founder of the Friends of Roberts Field and from the work that we've done there in the natural parts of the park. I agree with what's been said already, that it's completely out of character for the park. And it is going to create an eyesore for the neighborhood. I think the images, even turned sideways, show just how big and obtrusive this structure would be. Piggybacking on what Jocelyn said, we have, from a Roberts Field Improvement Committee standpoint, we have done a lot of surveys and gathering of information from park users and people from the neighborhood. And one of the concerns that did come up was light pollution. And adding lights to the pole is not something that I would think would be really well welcomed from the folks. Also, from the improvement committee standpoint, we did find out today that the Chelmsford Youth Soccer Association doesn't have an interest in using the soccer fields. So lighting for those fields is not something that I would expect that we would be looking for from an improvement standpoint. I'm sensitive to the financial benefit of this, but from a neighborhood standpoint and from just an overall character of the park standpoint, I don't think any amount of money would really justify doing what I think that this would do. One of the other concerns that I have is with the location and the proximity to the pond. I don't know if you guys have visited the pond recently, but it's been in a lot of use lately with skaters. And this is going to dominate that small little area that skaters use now, and is used in the spring and the warmer times for picnics and such. It's just going to overshadow everything there. So just from my standpoint, I'm firmly against this. I think it's a terrible idea, and I'd ask you guys to step up and put a stop to it tonight if it's possible. Thank you.
Would you like to say something, ma'am? Again, would you like to comment on some of them?
Just to clarify, we didn't have any plans to cut down any trees or change anything in the park. It was our understanding that we were going at the fire station. We didn't mean to impede into the park. So I just wanted everyone to know my intention, or our intention was.
Can I clarify that in the
Sure.
plan there's actually a loss of 2 trees?
Okay, 2 trees, okay.
There is a swath that says to be clear cut.
Does that clarify it for you, or?
It clarifies it, doesn't change my
But,
mind.
yeah, no, I know, I understand, yeah, I understand. Understand that, but no, we weren't gonna clear cut anything, or, like I said, impede space on the park. We were, proposing it right behind the utility building of the fire station. The other thing is, the Board of Selectmen can approve it to move forward at as a different design, at a different height. You could reduce the height, you could mandate that we reduce the height, and we come up with a more aesthetically pleasing design, too. So I just wanted to suggest that's a possibility.
Okay. Thank you.
And does anybody have any questions for me at all?
No, I think we've heard just about everything I need to know. I don't know about anybody else.
Can I add just one more thing? Do I need to go to the?
Yeah.
Please.
From the improvement committee standpoint, it hasn't been discussed or decided about the life of the DPW garage that's there now. There's been discussions of that being torn down. There's been discussions of that being converted into some other use. So there may be, I just wanted to point that out, that there may be an option where that structure is gone, and there's a willingness on the part of the committee to create a picnic pavilion, which obviously wouldn't be much of a picnic pavilion with a monolithic pole there. So. Thanks.
Should we take a vote on this, then, Nate?
I mean, if I were gonna make a motion, my motion would be that we not move forward with this proposal. Leave it at that.
I would second that.
Wait a minute, when you say not move forward, you mean to, right, okay, you said before, take no action, that's not what you
Well,
mean
that's
now.
what, well, yeah, since you want a motion.
As it is
take-
presented now, right?
Right, take no action on this proposal, correct? Or not move forward with this proposal, however you want to, whatever I just said.
Does that mean
There's
they
two
could-
different meanings, I think.
Yeah, with this proposal, would you say that the town not move forward with a proposal to construct a wireless communications tower at the Roberts Field Fire Station area?
At this time, I would say that, yes. Basically, I think that's what we're saying. Since this is the only proposal we have, I would.
I think that's more clear, though.
Right, it's not go back and work with them to come up with a more acceptable proposal. It's basically, we're not going there.
We're not going there.
Right.
That's the way I.
Okay, so my motion would be that at this time, we not entertain a proposal to construct a cell tower on Roberts Field. Is that sufficient?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Vivian. Opposed. Thank you, ma'am, very much.
Thank you.